Hi, and welcome to my February reading wrap up. I read 7 books this month, and we're going to go through them from worst to best. Before we get into the rankings and reviews, let's go over some stats. So, like I said, I read 7 books, totaling 2,516 pages. They were mostly tense, mysterious, and dark, which is typical for me. Average time to finish the books was 6 days. But my very favorite book of the month I read in 24 hours. More on that later. 50% of the books I read were fast-paced and 50% were medium-paced. Most of the books I read were 300 to 499 pages. And then there was 1 or maybe 2 that were under 300 pages. My average rating was a 3.89. Which is great for me. I really am learning my reading taste because February of last year, my average rating was 2.97. And in February of 2024, it was 2.84. My top genres were thriller, romance, and fantasy. We got the romance in there for Valentine's Day. One of the books that I was really looking forward to on my February TBR unfortunately turned out to be a DNF. And that book was Night Watching by Tracy Sierra. I made it 8% through this book before I DNF'd it. It was unbearable for me. The writing style, in my opinion, was terrible. It read so stilted and disjointed, and I could tell there was just no way I was going to be able to emotionally attach to these characters with the writing like that. I had heard that this story is slow, so I did prepare myself for that. How this author made a home invasion story this boring and this incredibly slow is beyond me. When I started forcing myself to read like a chapter a day, that's when I knew I needed to DNF it. I know this from past experiences. So I stopped torturing myself and I DNF'd this. And I have gotten so much better at DNFing books. It's just not worth it. And I will say I don't usually DNF this early, but in this case, I had to. My lowest rated book this month was The Ex by Shalini Boland. I have to say I'm a little bit disappointed. I've been chasing the high of this author's The Silent Bride for years. I think I read that in 2024, and that book had me in a chokehold. This book was good. It was just average. I was hoping for it to be great. All of this author's books are available on Kindle Unlimited, and I have enjoyed several of her popcorn thrillers. But there have also been some misses. Her latest release before this one, I actually DNF'd. My ratings for this author have been all over the board, but I will definitely read more books from her again. In The Ex, we're following 2 women's point of views. First is Willow. She's living a quiet life in a seaside town, and she's definitely very guarded. She's not looking for new relationships of any kind because it's not worth the inevitable fallout. Whitney ends up meeting a guy named Gabe in a coffee shop, and they hit it off right away. Even though she is reluctant, she has to go on a date with him. Their first date goes so well that Whitney begins to think that maybe she can let someone in again. Not long after meeting Gabe, a beautiful and charismatic girl moves into the apartment next door to Whitney. Her name is Priya, and her and Whitney hit it off right from the start too. Whitney is happily discovering that she's able to open up her heart to love and friendships again. But one day, Whitney comes home to find Gabe and Priya outside of Priya's apartment talking and laughing. Then they go inside Priya's apartment together. Whitney's heart stops. Priya and Gabe know each other? What the fuck is going on here? The second point of view is the one I was most invested in. We followed Jasmine, who married Adam about a year ago, and they had built a pretty nice life together. Adam has been sweet, loving, and charming since they met, until he isn't. It starts with a lot of little things, and then it grows catastrophically over time. When he first starts changing, he starts accusing Jasmine of wanting to spend time with her friends over spending time with him. He gets jealous, petty, and controlling. He's even jealous of the time that Jasmine spends with her grandmother. And he sabotages Jasmine going to see her grandmother for her birthday. Unfortunately, in the midst of her husband turning into a completely abusive piece of shit, Jasmine is laid off from her job. So then Adam starts financially abusing her. He insists that she doesn't need to get another job, and then he controls every cent that she spends. And since she's not working, he stops paying for her car insurance. So she has no way to leave the house and go places. He keeps her passport locked up in a safe. Of course, he puts a tracker on her phone. He makes it increasingly more difficult for Jasmine to escape this unbearable situation. Jasmine needs to find a way to get money and escape as soon as possible. Adam is getting closer and closer to harming her physically. He's already roughly grabbing her and pushing her around. It was so anxiety-inducing to see the abuse escalate, knowing that Jasmine is trying and failing to escape. I was always eager to get back to her point of view. I did like this book, but I just needed a bit more. It felt lacking in bingeability, and that is the whole point of reading a popcorn thriller. If we just followed Jasmine for the entire book and took her story to another level, I could see myself really loving this. The 15 epilogues were also excessive, and it didn't contribute to making the ending any more interesting and satisfying overall. The very last epilogue that I think was made to shock had me rolling my eyes. As is, this book is a 3-star thriller read for me. I don't not recommend it, but there's so many more bingeable popcorn thrillers on KU that are better than this. And even better ones from this author. I had a few 3.5-star reads this month. And one of those was Dear Debbie by Frida McFadden. Oh, Frida, we love to hate her, right? I'll be honest, I have really enjoyed her books in the past. Her last 4 or so releases, though, not so much. But everyone's been talking about this book and saying it's a banger, so I had to check it out. And I will say this book is so much better compared to her last several releases. It's bingeable, it's fun, and it's so easy to read in like a day or two. Again, this was another good thriller. It just wasn't great. And I definitely didn't love it. In this book, we're following Debbie. Crazy, right? And she writes an advice column for a small local newspaper. We get to read the Dear Debbie drafts, and they are dark. Debbie has a whole file of responses that are not suitable for print. And they're all basically telling women creative ways to kill their husbands. Debbie ends up getting fired from this conservative newspaper after giving a piece of advice that is considered controversial. Debbie is mad, and you do not want to piss Debbie off. Along with being fired, Debbie has multiple things in her life that are really pissing her off. Debbie is going to protect herself and especially her husband and 2 daughters in very unconventional ways. Her husband has asked for a much-deserved promotion at work, and he is denied. He decides to call his boss's bluff and quits on the spot. This ends up backfiring. Debbie knows precisely how to fix that problem. Her youngest daughter, Izzy, gets kicked off her soccer team, and Debbie is determined to get her back on it. Her oldest daughter, Lexi, has a deadbeat boyfriend who does not treat her right. And Debbie is not going to tolerate that either. Nothing that can't be solved with a little bit of unhinged and a teensy bit of murder, right? Debbie decides that it's time to take her own advice. I enjoyed how fast-paced this book was and all of the twists and turns in the story. Like I said, this is a book you can binge in one sitting or like in a day or two. It's not amazing. It's not going to blow you away with like an amazing piece of literature. It's junk food, essentially. And I do love binging a trashy thriller. It's just mindless fun. And the final twist really did stun me. It was so nice to have that familiar Frida twist, that head spinning what the fuck just happened, without it being super lame and eye rolling. This is a really good popcorn thriller for what it is. and I do actually recommend it. The next 3.5-star read I want to tell you about is Anatomy of an Alibi by Ashley Elston. I was highly anticipating this thriller. The premise sounded so unique and so juicy. I think this is an unpopular opinion, but I did really like First Lie Wins by this author. I think with both of her books, the premises sounded really exciting, but they both did fall a little bit short. This book is intricately plotted and well written. This book is going to make you think. It was just missing that feverish excitement of being a page-turning thriller. There were entirely too many characters and connections to remember, making it a little bit too much work and not enough twisty thriller fun. I appreciated the originality and complexity of the story. It was very good. It's just not going to be one of my favorite thrillers of the year. This book follows two women. Camille is living a charmed life with her husband, Ben. She is wealthy and she lives in a beautiful home. Everything seems perfect, but it is not. Camille wants out of her marriage. Ben is super controlling and tracks her every move. He is suffocating her. They have an ironclad prenup, so Camille needs to find some dirt on Ben, something that will void their prenup so that Camille can escape and have some financial stability. Camille knows that Ben is hiding secrets. She just needs to find out what. Then we also follow Aubrey. She is a young, broke bartender living in a house share with a ton of different roommates, but it's all that she can afford. Aubrey may have the dirt that Camille needs on Ben. Aubrey is motivated by revenge. She believes that Ben is the reason for something terrible that happened to her years ago, and she intends to take him down. The women end up teaming up and concocting a crazy plan. Neither is sure if it will work, but they both are willing to try. They will switch places for 24 hours. Aubrey will impersonate Camille while she's out of town on a work trip. Aubrey disguises herself as Camille. She makes sure that she is seen walking around the town and she's using Camille's credit cards. She's also carrying around Camille's cell phone with Ben's tracker on it. So she's leaving a whole electronic trail. This leaves Camille to stay in town and spy on Ben and try to figure out what his dirty secrets are. Then the next morning, Ben is found murdered. A great alibi has been set for Camille. People think that they had seen her out and about walking around in this town miles away from where her husband was murdered. And of course, there's credit card transactions and cell phone data that show that she was not in the area, when actually she was. Aubrey, of course, is like, well, fuck, now I'm screwed. She created an alibi for Ben's wife, and she has no alibi for herself. Did Camille plan for this to happen this way? Did Camille kill Ben? We then watch as everything plays out in the days after the murder. I really enjoyed reading the women's points of views the day and night of the switch. Suspense is built as you hope that these women can pull this plan off. The aftermath of the alibi had a much more slower moving plot. The chapters are also way too long, and that made it hard to keep the momentum up. I did keep forgetting who certain characters were, and I saw on social media people making character lists trying to keep up. I want to enjoy my reading experience without all that extra work. It just seems silly to me. I did not figure out who Ben's killer was, and the reveal definitely shook me. The book is so well done, but you do need to have a lot of patience and pay very close attention if you want to pick this up. I rated Silvercloak by L.K. Stephen 3.5 stars. I heard mixed things about this fantasy book, but when I saw it available on Libby, I decided to give it a try. I'm conflicted. I enjoyed so much about this story, from the complex characters to the forbidden romance. But at the same time, I didn't love how slow-paced it was. And then a large part of the plot was like a police force trying to take down this crime syndicate, which is something I'm not very interested in. And at times it was hard to pick this book back up. But I never felt like DNFing it. I was invested in a lot of the characters and some of the storyline. This book follows our FMC Saffron, who is part of a police force called the Silver Cloaks. Everyone in this fictional fantasy world has magical powers, and they even use magic wands. People fill their magical wells, if you will, through either pleasure or pain. Once their magical wells are depleted, they must seek out a pleasure-filled experience or cause themselves pain in order to restore their magical powers. Saffron was just a child when a dangerous and vicious gang called the Blood Moons showed up at her door, came in, and ruthlessly murdered her parents. Saffron has been haunted by this memory ever since. She is set on seeking revenge against the Blood Moons. Saffron is tasked with going undercover and infiltrating herself within the Blood Moons. Saffron is chosen because she is immune to magic, something that she hides from everyone. When Saffron's captain finds out this information, she knows that Saffron is the perfect one to send undercover for this mission. Saffron initially makes her move on the Kingpin's, or like the head boss's son. His name is Levin, and he is a ruthless torturer and killer. He is skeptical of Saffron at first, but she starts to prove her loyalty, especially when she agrees to be branded. Getting branded by the Blood Moons essentially guarantees your loyalty. If you try to betray the Blood Moons while you have the brand, it will force you to stop and effectively kill you. Saffron is immune to the magical brand, but the Blood Moons don't know that. So Levin starts to trust her more and more. As Saffron gets to know Levin, she starts to find herself caring for him more and more. And of course, attraction grows. We go through the whole story as Saffron plots to set the Blood Moons up, doing illegal activity, and then send the Silver Cloaks in to catch them. That plot point got repetitive and boring. Saffron would set up the Blood Moons and the plan would fail. Saffron would set up the Blood Moons again and the plan would fail. She was constantly finding ways for the Silver Cloaks to catch the Blood Moons in illegal activities, but every single time, something would make it fail. What I liked reading about was the seedy underbelly of the Blood Moons operation. One of the ways that they make money is through a casino that they own, where they drug their cocktails to ensure the patrons will keep coming back for more and spending more money and losing more money. Then, of course, they punish the people that cannot pay their debts. One thing that they did to female patrons that could not pay their debts is they would shrink them down to miniature, put them in a little glass display case in the front window of the casino, and make them dance nude to attract customers to come and look at the casino. And I thought those things were so sinister, but so much fun. I also enjoyed Saffron and Levin's blossoming trust and romance. Then the ending of this book set up for a trope that I usually really enjoy. So I think when the second book comes out in September, it's called Turncloak, I will pick it up. That ending definitely intrigued me enough to want to continue on in the series for now. Overall, there was really good and some bad. I did really like it. I just didn't love it and I wasn't obsessed with it like I want it to be. Maybe book 2 will get me even more invested in the story and I'll want to continue on. We'll see. I had one 3.75 star read, and that was Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. I can't say I wasn't warned. I had heard multiple reviews that this book does not compare to the first book in the duology. Ruthless Vows is book 2 in the Letters of Enchantment duology. Book 1, Divine Rivals, I rated 5 stars. Wow. It was so fucking good. Even though I had seen bad reviews for this book, I still had high expectations anyway. And yeah, it was a little bit disappointing. But don't get me wrong, this is not a bad book at all. A 3.75 in my eyes is a great book. It just doesn't compare to the 5-star read that was the first book in this duology. And this review will have no spoilers for this book or the first one. In Ruthless Vows, I was excited to get back to Roman's point of view, especially after what happened at the ending of book 1. His storyline was probably the most interesting part of this book for me. This book heavily follows the continuation of the war between the two gods. It was interesting, but it was missing the magic of Iris's and Roman's relationship in the first book. The moments when they were briefly reunited in this story were some of my favorite parts of the book as well. Iris's plot line throughout the story I was pretty bored with, to be honest. The last 20% of this book or so, I was just reading it just to get through it. I was getting pretty disinterested and I was ready for it to just wrap up. The conclusion to Iris's and Roman's story was so beautiful though. I was really happy with it. That final chapter though made no sense to me. I hope it wasn't implying what I thought it was implying. I probably need to look up theories or other interpretations online because I was just left feeling like, what the fuck? This book was feeling like a 4-star read up until like the halfway point. After about the 60% mark in this book, the pacing slows way down, and I was impatiently waiting for the pace to pick back up and for me to get more invested in the story. But that did not happen, unfortunately. I still wholeheartedly recommend Divine Rivals. But I think you do need to read Ruthless Vows to get to the ultimate conclusion of the story. So just keep that in mind if you do decide to start this duology, that book 2 will be a little bit more slower paced and a little less enthralling. Now it's time for me to tell you about my 2 shining 5-star reads. The first one is Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. Every February around Valentine's Day, I try to read a romance book. I am just not a romance girly, no matter how hard I try. I've read all of the heavy hitters like Abby Jimenez, Carly Fortune, Annabelle Monaghan, Christina Lauren, Renee Carlino, and I just did not enjoy any of them. But this romance book hit so hard for me. The characters in this story will be living rent-free in my head for a long time. And do you see this cover? This cover is stunning. I am obsessed with it. I want to get it printed and hang it on the walls of my home. It's just so gorgeous. And the inside was just as beautiful as well. This story, the characters, the trauma, the grief, the emotion, the writing were all so well done. I was seriously blown away by Kennedy's writing. I was highlighting my Kindle like a mad woman. This is a second chance romance, but it is not light or fluffy at all. Grief is a very prevalent theme in this book. I have not personally experienced the grief that has touched the characters in this book, but I could feel the devastation pouring off of the pages and piercing my heart. And I'm going to read you an excerpt from Yasmin's point of view about grief. As you can see, highlighted. It says, grief is a grind. It is the work of breathing and waking and rising and moving through a world that feels emptier. A gaping hole has been torn into your existence, and everyone around you just walks right past it like it's not even there. That last line was like a gut punch, so visceral. Their love story started like any other. They met, they fell in love, and they got married. They have 2 children, a 14-year-old girl and a 10-year-old boy. After tragedy struck the family, Yasmin fell into a deep depression. She ends up asking the man that she thought was the love of her life for a divorce. Now it's 2 years later, and Yasmin and Josiah are successfully co-parenting their children, managing their business, and getting along. When Josiah starts dating the head chef at their restaurant, Yasmin finds herself feeling jealous. She tries to talk herself out of those feelings because she let him go. Yasmin has no right in her mind to feel jealous. Yasmin very slowly starts to open up to her two best friends, Soledad and Hendrix. They pretty much have to force the information out of Yasmin because she is feeling guilty and confused about her feelings. And she also does not want to admit to her two friends that maybe she made a huge mistake and now it's too late to fix it. Her two best friends are so kick-ass and they injected much needed levity into the story, especially Hendrix. This is an interconnected romance series and I cannot wait to get to Hendrix's book. Before Yasmin lets go for good, she needs to make sure that there is nothing left between her and Josiah. We also get Josiah's point of view in this story, and we learn that he is still hurting from Yasmin's rejection and how he strongly feels like he could never trust Yasmin fully again. Plus, Josiah is in a new relationship and he is trying to convince himself that he is moving on. In other words, he's scared as fuck at the thought of letting Yasmin back in again. Is there any way they can navigate the minefield of their history, grief, and trauma to find their way back to each other? This book follows the sometimes painful path to try to answer that question. There's another excerpt, I promise, just one more from Josiah's point of view that I want to share because I thought it was so beautiful. It reads, "Me reaching for the fire that used to spark between us and finding only ashes." I'm telling you, this writing is out of this world. I thought Josiah was perfectly imperfect. He had so much character development throughout the book. His character arc and his feelings and his emotions were just so meaningful. I don't know, this book was just so impactful for me. I loved it. There are a lot of romances that are not for me, and that's okay. It makes it even more special when I find a gem like this one. I would encourage you to pick it up even if you're not a romance reader like me. 5-star perfection. Now, before I let you all go, I have one more book to tell you about. My very favorite book of February. And that book is My Husband's Wife by Alice Feeney. Oh my fucking God, you guys. This book is so damn good. This is Alice Feeney's best work yet. I read this in 24 hours. I could not put it down. The twists were so shocking. It completely blew me away. I would stop reading after every reveal and just look around and my family is like, "What?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, I cannot believe this just happened. Are you kidding me?" That's probably what I said the most. Are you kidding me? I was genuinely stunned. It was so well done, and it's also incredibly written. I even annotated a thriller book. This story starts out following Eden. Eden and her husband just bought a beautiful home in a sleepy coastal town. It's a new, fresh start for this couple. Eden goes out one night for her evening run, and when she returns home, she discovers that her key does not fit in the lock. She is confused, so she starts knocking on the door to be let in. A strange woman who looks eerily like her answers the door and says that she lives there. And then Eden's husband comes to the door and says, "I don't know you. This is my wife, not you." Of course, Eden is like, "What the fuck is going on?" And us as the reader, we're like, "What the fuck is happening?" Eden does go to the police, but they don't believe her, especially after they speak to Eden's husband and this strange woman who is now claiming to be Eden. Then we jump into Birdie's point of view. And at first I was like, I don't give a fuck about Birdie. I want to get back to Eden's story. But it turns out that Birdie's story is just as interesting. And I became so invested in Birdie as well. Birdie is a bit of a loner. She only really likes the company of her dog. Birdie has had a recent cancer diagnosis and she's kind of walking numbly through life. When a man comes to her door telling her that she has a grandmother that she never even knew existed and that this grandmother has passed away, she's a little bit suspicious. The man also informs her that her grandmother has left Birdie her house. And this ends up all checking out and being completely legit. When Birdie goes to her grandmother's house to prepare it for sale, she finds a strange invitation among her grandmother's things. And it's from a company that claims it can predict the day of your death. And it turns out it did predict her grandmother's date of death successfully. When I heard this new plot point, I was chomping at the bit. I live for crazy, weird, creepy shit like this in my books. And it was so unexpected because we already had this other crazy storyline, and now we're jumping into something else that is just as fascinating. And both of the storylines were keeping me at the edge of my seat. So being that Birdie has cancer, she decides to reach out to this company for herself so she can know exactly when she's going to die. Now, how these point of views merge, I cannot tell you. I think it's best to go into this book with as little information as possible. I was shook from each storyline that emerged and reeling from the mind-blowing twists. This book is incredible. As an avid thriller reader, I can tell you that this is the best thriller book I've read in years. So please, no matter what your favorite genre is, you need to pick up this book. Thank you so much for watching my February wrap-up. I love making these videos, and these are actually my favorite ones to watch. On my channel this year, I'm going to make more reading wrap-ups, TBR jar videos, book recommendations, and book hauls. So if you would like to, please subscribe. And thank you again so much for watching.